With depression, most people don't even realize they have it. In their heads, they think, I have to try harder, I can't stay like this. Even though you keep telling yourself this, your body and mind have already reached their limit. There are actually many people whose way of speaking completely changes when they become depressed. Realizing sooner that a loved one's way of speaking is a sign of depression can make a big difference. This video is for those in that situation. In the second half, I'll share 2 questions to help check for depression, so please watch until the end. Thank you for watching. This is YouTube Medical University. In this video, I'll discuss 6 common ways people with depression speak. Based on my experience treating patients, I've observed that many people speak in these ways. And because people with depression have certain characteristic symptoms, those traits show up in the way they speak. Most people with depression are not even aware of it themselves. In fact, even in outpatient clinics, it's common for people who complain of dizziness to actually be diagnosed with depression as the examination progresses, or for those who think they can't go to work because of fatigue to find out it was actually depression. If only you or someone important to you could realize sooner that the way they talk is actually a symptom of depression. I made this video for people like that. Now here is today's agenda. In the first section, I will introduce the characteristics of how people with depression speak. In the second section, I will discuss ways to relieve stress, which can cause depression. In the third section, I will introduce a simple way to check if you might have depression while watching this video. And in the fourth section, I will talk about 5 things you should do while recovering from depression. At YouTube Medical University, we share knowledge about disease prevention and early symptoms that can help you become healthier starting tomorrow, as well as information that's hard to discuss during regular consultations. If you don't want to miss new videos, I would be really happy if you could subscribe to the channel. Let's start the first section. 6 common ways people with depression speak. Here's the first. They tend to say, I'm fine out of habit. For example, you don't seem very energetic lately. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Are there people who tend to answer, I'm just a little tired? Actually, as I mentioned earlier, with depression, sometimes it's not you, but the people around you who notice it first. You may feel just a bit tired and push on, but others can see you're actually very exhausted. That kind of thing can happen. People with depression often don't want to worry those around them. They often push themselves and claim they're fine even when they're not. And in reality, because of this situation at work, even if they say they're not okay, if they take leave, no one fills the gap. So even when asked, they have to say they're fine. Most people are in that kind of situation. So instead of just asking if they're okay, since there are people who have no choice but to answer they're okay when asked, if you're worried about someone, first try to casually chat with them about their daily life, like whether they're eating properly, sleeping well, or enjoying their hobbies. Through these light conversations, if you still feel concerned about them, suggest seeing a specialist or leaving work early. Inform their supervisor to arrange time off. These actions are essential. 6 ways to support someone with depression. Here's the second one. Slurred speech. Depression and slurred speech. You might be wondering what the connection is. There are actually many people whose way of speaking changes drastically. When someone becomes depressed, they may lose motivation, feel down, or lose their appetite. They can't sleep and experience various symptoms, including insomnia. One characteristic symptom is waking up early in the morning, known as early morning awakening. Even when you struggle to fall asleep at night, you wake up early and can't get back to sleep. Those are the symptoms. Even if you go about your work or house chores, you feel sleepy all day, but when night comes, you still can't sleep. You end up falling into this kind of negative cycle. In fact, it's said that the concentration level of someone who is sleep deprived is about the same as that of someone who is drunk. There are actually people who, when sleep deprived, start to slur their words as if they were intoxicated. In reality, there are people who lose confidence because their boss tells them to speak more clearly, even though they think they're already speaking clearly. They start to wonder, is there something wrong with the way I talk? Another trait of people with depression is that some become more easily moved to tears. In fact, there are people who start to shed tears while talking in the examination room. Even if they just get a little warning from their family or co-workers, they suddenly start to cry, even though they normally wouldn't. These symptoms are common in people with depression, despite differences in their speech. I believe that physical symptoms like crying or heart palpitations are distress signals from the heart. Even though my brain and rational side want to try harder, feel like I have to push myself and think I shouldn't give up so easily, my heart has already reached its limit. As a result, physical symptoms like crying, heart palpitations, and trembling hands appear. Even if you think you can keep going in your head, your heart and body are warning you that if you push any further, something serious might happen. You need to stop pushing yourself and take a break. These symptoms can appear as distress signals. If you notice someone around you becoming more tearful than usual, there is a possibility they might be suffering from depression. I would be grateful if you could have the attitude of listening to them. Here are 6 common ways people with depression tend to talk. The third one is this: speaking in a rushed or anxious manner. Yeah. Oh, by the way, sorry, what was I trying to say again? It's totally fine to speak slowly, you don't have to rush. Actually, this tendency to get flustered and not be able to organize your thoughts could also be a symptom of depression. Symptoms of depression include feelings of restlessness and decreased concentration. Restlessness is feeling anxious, uneasy, or fidgety without a clear reason. You continue to feel a tense and strained sense of nervousness. When these symptoms show as actions, you feel so restless you can't sit still, fidget with your hands, or suddenly stand up and move around. These are the kinds of symptoms you may experience. And because your concentration also decreases, you feel rushed, but you can't get your words out clearly. So you end up saying things like, and then, and speak in a flustered way, unable to organize your words. There are people who end up speaking like this. This is something that people with depression often do. The fourth characteristic of the 6 ways of speaking is that your words become broken and fragmented. Because of these characteristics, in this project we put the customer first. Sorry. Suddenly your thoughts stop and you can't come up with the next words, so you say something like, let me organize my thoughts a bit more and present again next time. These symptoms are typical of this illness and are called psychomotor retardation. It sounds complex, but it's actually simple. The way you speak and move becomes slower than usual. Those are some characteristics, but there are other factors too. Among the traits of people with depression, there is also something called microdelusions. Microdelusions are when you evaluate yourself lower than you actually are and start thinking negative things like, I'm a worthless person. It's a symptom where you can't find value in yourself, and you also start to lose the ability to find value in various things around you. And there are also people who can no longer feel their own self-worth. When that happens, even during conversations, you might think, I'm sorry for taking their time, or I'm not worth anything, making it hard to organize your thoughts or keep the conversation going. Some people end up suffering even more because those around them misunderstand and think maybe this person just isn't motivated. Because of things like this, people who seem to lack confidence or motivation, or whose words come out haltingly, might actually be speaking that way as a symptom of depression. I hope you'll keep in mind that this could be the case. Here's the 5th trait of how people with depression speak. They often say things like, either way is fine. For example, if a friend asks, what do you want to eat tonight? They might say, anything is fine. At work, when someone asks, do you want to take your break first? Or do you want to stay and take your break later? People with depression often end up saying, either way is fine. There are quite a few people with depression who tend to say this. It's not that they truly don't care about the choice, rather their concentration and decision-making abilities have declined, and most characteristically, their motivation has decreased due to depression. This makes it hard for them to quickly think and make decisions, so they end up saying either way is fine. If they really think about it, it takes time, and they feel bad for using so much of it. So they end up saying either way is fine and leave the decision to the other person. However, this kind of behavior can be misunderstood, and people might think he's not interested in me, or he's not looking forward to this at all. This can sometimes lead to trouble between couples or friends. Questions about depression frequently appear on the National Medical Licensing Exam for medical students. That is, people with depression should not make any major decisions. Depression is, so to speak, a disease of the brain. Sometimes they may make serious decisions that they would never normally make by mistake. They might think, I'll quit this job, or I'll move to a different area. In the worst case, they might think, maybe it would be better if I just disappeared. Since their thoughts can easily become extreme, I hope people around those with depression avoid making them face important decisions. For example, even asking something like, is there anywhere you'd like to go on your next day off? Or if there's anything you'd like to eat, just let me know. Even if these are casual questions asked out of consideration, they might actually be a burden for the other person, so I hope you'll be careful about that. Here's the 6th common characteristic of how people with depression often speak. They tend to cancel plans at the last minute more frequently. Sorry, is it okay if I cancel today's plans? I'm not feeling well. Oh, again, are you alright? Don't push yourself. Like this, it becomes more common to cancel plans at the last minute. One of the main symptoms of depression is a loss of interest and motivation. And on top of that, there's an overwhelming sense of fatigue, like your body is weighed down with lead. Many patients complain about this. However, even people with depression think in their heads that they want to keep up with those around them, enjoy daily life like everyone else, and that it's probably better to get out of the house and refresh themselves. Because of this, they sometimes push themselves to accept invitations from friends. But when they get home and think about it, their body feels so heavy that they can't imagine going out to have fun on their day off. Even if they do go out, they feel like they probably won't enjoy it and might even end up making others feel uncomfortable. Thinking this way, they sometimes cancel plans at the last minute. As symptoms progress, they may start refusing invitations altogether, but for people with depression, even turning down an invitation can be a burden. So, for those around them, instead of encouraging them by saying, "You're feeling down, so let's go out or have a drink," it would be great if you could focus on supporting the things they decide they want to do on their own. How was that? Let's review today's lesson. Here are 6 common ways people with depression tend to speak. First, they often say, "I'm fine." Second, their speech can become slurred. Third, they may talk in a rushed manner. Fourth, their words may come out in fragments. Fifth, they often say, "Either way is fine." And sixth, they tend to cancel plans at the last minute more often. These common ways of speaking are not listed in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. 5. I introduced these based on my own experience as well as the symptoms in the diagnostic criteria for depression. Please remember, just because someone fits these patterns doesn't necessarily mean they have depression. And if they don't fit them, it doesn't mean they don't have depression. Please be careful not to make assumptions. So, in the next lesson, I will introduce methods I use to recover my concentration and relieve stress. It's about using coping. Do you all know what coping is? The meaning is simple. It refers to methods for dealing with stress. When you actually feel stressed, what kind of actions do you usually take? Do you ever find yourself unconsciously drinking a lot of alcohol or overeating? As a result of stress, things like overeating or consuming a lot of alcohol can actually create a negative cycle. That's why it's important to have a few actions on hand that can help you reduce your stress. Some of you might be wondering why I'm saying something so obvious. Actually, when your stress increases and your brain function declines, you can't think of any coping methods at all. So while you're watching this video and feeling good, try writing down the coping methods you can use in your smartphone notes or a notebook. Walk, drink coffee, read a book. Listen to your favorite music or visit a cafe with friends. Anything that excites or makes you happy. It's important to make sure you have those kinds of activities and write them down as a memo. When you start to feel mentally exhausted, look back at this memo and see if there's something you can do. The method I just mentioned is called emotion-focused coping. By having these kinds of coping skills, even if your capacity is filled with stress, you can relieve some of that accumulated stress as a way to take a breather. In fact, work stress can even become something that feels a bit pleasant. Like Roland San would say, it turns into growing pains. And by reframing it as your own growth, you can actually start to feel a sense of fulfillment and enter a flow state. If you have too much stress, it can lead to illness. But if you have no stress at all, life becomes boring. Please think about what you can do when stress builds up so that you can control it to a moderate level and feel it as growing pains. Definitely keep this in mind. Please share the ways you deal with stress in the comments section of this video. It should be helpful for others as well. Now let's review the second period. As a way to relieve stress, I recommended coping skills. Writing down in advance what you can do when you feel tired. Here at YouTube Medical University, I share information based on my own experiences to help you live a healthy and vibrant life starting tomorrow. I provide this information responsibly, based on data. I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe so you don't miss new videos. Up to this point, I've introduced ways to cope with stress, but these are methods for when you can still manage your own stress. If it becomes so serious that you can no longer handle it yourself, in that case, it's important to seek support from professionals and others. So, in the third period, we'll go over a clinical test used to check for depression. I'll introduce the 2-question method, which has 2 questions. There are 2 major symptoms of depression. The 2-question method is used to screen for the presence of these 2 symptoms. For the following 2 questions, if you have often experienced these symptoms in the past month, answer yes. If not, please answer no. Let's begin. In the past month, have you often felt down or depressed? Second question. In the past month, have you often found it hard to enjoy things or lost interest in things you used to enjoy? If neither of these questions applies to you, your risk of depression is lower. However, if you answered yes to at least one of these questions and, as I will introduce next, 4 or more out of the following 7 questions also apply to you, your risk of depression increases. In that case, I recommend you consult your regular doctor or a mental health specialist. Now, the first one, loss of appetite. You always have a reduced appetite. Your weight has decreased even though you are not trying to lose weight. Second, sleep disturbance. You struggle to sleep well nearly every night. You wake up in the middle of the night, or you wake up early in the morning and can't go back to sleep. Third, psychomotor retardation or agitation. Your speech and movements are slower than usual. Words don't come out easily. Alternatively, you may feel restless and unable to sit still. Fourth, you feel fatigued or have less energy and tire more easily than usual. You don't feel motivated, your body feels heavy, and even doing everyday things takes more time. Fifth, guilt. You feel like you're worthless, you keep blaming yourself for doing something wrong, and you think that things aren't going well because of you. Sixth, decreased concentration and thinking ability. You just can't seem to focus on things, your thinking slows down, and you can't organize your thoughts. Even reading the newspaper or watching television, you can't absorb the content. Seventh, suicidal thoughts and deep sadness. And you start to feel like you want to disappear from this world. You've made plans to do so. What about you? If you experienced 4 or more of these 7 questions during the same 2-week period, if these symptoms apply to you, there is a high possibility that you may be suffering from depression, so I hope this information is helpful. Of course, what you need to be careful about here is whether or not depression can be diagnosed based on just these kinds of questions. And the answer is no. There are many processes involved before reaching a diagnosis, such as an examination by a specialist or ruling out other illnesses like bipolar disorder. And just because you don't fit these questions doesn't mean we're saying you don't have depression. There are many things you might not even notice yourself. If you feel anxious or think any of this applies to you, please consider seeing a specialist or your regular doctor. Let's review the second period, checking for depression. There are 2 questions, known as the 2-question method. In the past month, have you often felt down or depressed, or have you found it hard to truly enjoy things or lacked motivation? I introduced a way to ask questions to check for these symptoms, followed by 7 questions as the next step. I presented 7 questions matching depression criteria like loss of appetite, insomnia, poor concentration, and restlessness. Since this has become a bit long, I hope you'll take notes and listen to it several times as you go along. Now, in the 4th period, we'll talk about what to do when you become depressed or when you feel down like in depression, or 10 unexpected symptoms. If you find that several of these apply to you and you feel like you're dealing with stress, I'd like to introduce 5 recommended actions for you. If you are actually diagnosed with depression, it's important to trust your primary doctor or counselor. Follow their appropriate advice, take medication if necessary, and focus on recovery. Among these, improving your lifestyle habits is extremely important. As I mentioned in the first period, when you develop depression, the balance of your autonomic nervous system becomes disrupted, and that's not all. People with depression generally have lower levels of a substance called serotonin. It has been found that the hormone known as the happiness hormone is decreased. This serotonin is a neurotransmitter involved in mental stability. It is said that stress and an irregular lifestyle alone can cause serotonin levels to decrease. In fact, some of the antidepressants used to treat depression are medications that regulate serotonin in the brain, so by maintaining a regular lifestyle, you can increase the secretion of serotonin. Making sure it doesn't decrease is a very reasonable and important approach. So, that was a long introduction, but now I'll talk about what I actually recommend to my patients in the clinic. I will introduce 5 things you should do while recuperating. 5 things you should do while recuperating. The first one is this: get plenty of sleep. Sleep is the most important thing for secreting serotonin. Especially in the early stages of recovering from depression, make sure to get plenty of sleep. As a guideline, try to sleep for 7 to 8 hours a day. For some people, in the early stages of depression, their body feels so heavy that they end up sleeping all day and can't get up. Some people say they slept like a log. I think that's perfectly fine. As long as you feel sleepy and can't move, it's important to just rest. I believe that getting plenty of sleep is what matters most. On the other hand, there are also people who experience insomnia or trouble sleeping as a symptom of depression. At times like that, I think it's a good idea to consult your primary doctor and, if necessary, take sleeping medication. It's also very important to adjust your lifestyle habits so you can sleep better. In the past, I've made videos explaining topics related to sleep, sleeping medication, and whether or not they are truly safe. They're in the description box, so check them out if you're interested. You may worry that sleeping a lot will slow your recovery, and I get that impatience, but trust that more sleep, especially when tired, helps you improve. When you're sleepy, get plenty of rest. The second thing to do while recovering is to relax and take it easy. As I mentioned in the first lesson, for those whose bodies feel as heavy as lead or who are experiencing fatigue, no matter what you do, your focus drops and even reading doesn't register. Many people have these symptoms. Sometimes it's fine to just relax at home or your parents' place instead of forcing yourself to go out or distract yourself. Just rest without worrying about others. Depression is the disease of the brain. By resting your brain, you can recover. Remind yourself of that. First, make sure to prioritize getting rest. I'll talk about this more later, but of course, living a regular lifestyle is important. However, after you've gotten plenty of rest and your brain function has started to recover, if you feel like you might be able to do something, try taking a short walk or doing something to refresh yourself. That's the stage you move into. If your body feels so sluggish that you can't even go outside, think of resting as your job and make sure to get plenty of rest. The third of the 5 things you should do while recovering is to try to maintain a regular lifestyle. It might sound obvious, but the first and second things are to get plenty of sleep and rest by just lying around. As the next step, please think about getting back into a regular routine. It's said that getting sunlight in the morning is important to increase serotonin secretion. Some people may have been so tired that they couldn't move and took a lot of naps. But if your energy is gradually coming back, try not to nap too much during the day. Instead, get plenty of sleep at night, keep your body active during the day, and do what you can to get back into your routine, like going outside for a walk to get some sunlight. One thing I want you to be careful about is scheduling activities. You might want to make plans, like going out with friends or going to a cafe. And when you feel like you can handle those kinds of activities, you might think you've recovered and want to challenge yourself. But if you set the bar too high from the start and can't follow through, it can make you feel discouraged. Forcing yourself or even just talking to people can become a mental burden. Make sure to take things step by step. Even if you don't have any plans, try just going outside for a bit, getting some sunlight, or listening to music outdoors. Start with simple things. The fourth thing you should do while recovering is to try to eat a balanced diet. Up to this point, I've only mentioned very basic things like sleeping, keeping a routine, and eating. Please be careful about information that sounds too good to be true, like, if you drink this, your depression will be cured. People with depression often feel down and have trouble concentrating, so your ability to judge things correctly might be lower. And when you're desperate, there are quite a few people who end up believing false information like, maybe if I drink this, I'll get better. Be especially cautious with information that seems too good to be true. There is no magic pill or supplement to cure depression. If one existed, hospitals would already prescribe it. Therefore, when it comes to meals, what's important is not so much taking a specific food, but being mindful of balance. Bananas and other tryptophan-rich foods, which help produce serotonin, are sometimes recommended, but ultimately it's about having a main dish, sides, and soup. I think it's important to get nutrients in a well-balanced way. Also, don't feel obligated to eat. Instead, think, I want to eat this now. Oh, food is actually this delicious. Please don't forget the happiness and joy that comes from simply eating food like this. In that sense, there's nothing you absolutely must not eat. While being mindful of balance, eating what you like may be the healthiest approach. Here is the fifth thing you should do during your recovery. It means doing things you can enjoy. The important thing is not to do things that just seem fun, but to do things you actually enjoy. Are you familiar with the term positive psychiatry? This is not the idea of fixing and improving the parts that have become ill or worsened, but rather about the qualities that humans originally possess. It's about restoring and recovering the strength to bounce back from illness. The idea is to cure illness using that method. In treating depression, after one becomes depressed, it's not about trying to get rid of or fix the parts of yourself you don't like, but rather, is there something you can enjoy or something that gives you a sense of accomplishment as you are now? By doing things you enjoy, before you know it, the strength you originally had to bounce back from illness will well up inside you, and as a result, your depression symptoms will lighten or even be cured. That's the kind of approach we're aiming for. What you enjoy can be anything at all. It's different for everyone. Watching anime, going to karaoke, reading, stretching. Try to do things that excite you or that you think you might enjoy right now. Many people feel guilty about enjoying themselves on leave or question if it's okay to do things unrelated to work, but that's actually part of healing. For those nearby, avoid pressuring with invitations like, if you're feeling down, let's go out for drinks. Instead, support what the person feels comfortable doing. Sometimes, actions that people around them think are helpful can actually be a burden for the person themselves, so it's important that the person can truly enjoy themselves from the heart. This may help them remember things they once forgot. They can rediscover inner joy, which can help them find strength to overcome their illness, I hope. Even if you're not feeling down right now, when you do feel down in the future, I hope you'll think about what you enjoy and keep a list or some ideas on hand. That's really important, so if you have any thoughts, please share them in the comments section. Reviewing the fourth period, here are 5 key things to remember while recovering from depression. If you're struggling or feeling down, keep these in mind. First, get plenty of sleep. Second, just relax and take it easy. Third, get back to a regular routine. Fourth, eat balanced meals and don't forget to enjoy your food. Fifth, do things you can enjoy. When you're feeling down, it's easy to forget these things, so make a note of them or keep them in mind. And when you feel a bit stressed, I hope you'll remember this video. How was it? At YouTube Medical University, we provide clear, practical health advice from a practicing doctor. With so much information available today, having a reliable source you trust is essential. If you don't want to miss new videos, please consider subscribing to the channel. It really encourages me. Also, whether it's a thumbs up or a thumbs down, your feedback on this video will help me improve for next time. Well then, see you in the next video.